Hello, Virgo. Something changed in you, and the people around you felt it before you even fully announced it, before you said anything different or did anything dramatically different. Something in the energy shifted, and they felt the shift, and they do not know what to do with it. Welcome. And let me tell you exactly what happened and why the reaction you are seeing from people is the most appropriate response to who you have become. You stopped tolerating, not with drama, not with a big announcement, not with a particular performance of someone who wants everyone to know that they have finally had enough. You simply stopped in the quiet internal way that real decisions happen. When someone finally reaches the place where what was acceptable before no longer is, and the line is drawn not for anyone else, for yourself, because you finally decided that you are worth the line, and the people who had grown comfortable with the previous version of you, the version that accommodated and explained and softened the edges of its own needs to fit into the space others decided to give it. Those people are shocked because they thought they knew how this worked, and they were wrong. I want to speak about the villain era because that phrase carries something important, and I want to use it correctly rather than carelessly. The villain era is not about becoming cruel, not about revenge, not about making people pay for what they took from you. When you were being more generous with yourself than they deserved, the villain era is about becoming the protagonist of your own story rather than a supporting character in everyone else's. It is the specific decision to stop making your own needs the last item on the list after everyone else has been considered and accommodated and given what they wanted, whether or not they earned it, in someone else's story. The person who puts themselves first is the villain because the story needs you to sacrifice for the plot to work, for the other characters to get what they want, without having to do the difficult work of actually earning it. You have stepped out of their story and into your own, which makes you the villain by their definition, and the hero by the only definition that matters. I want to describe what this looks like from the outside because I think understanding what others are seeing will help you understand why the reaction is what it is. They are seeing someone who used to be predictable, who could be counted on to respond in a certain way, to give a certain amount, to absorb a certain level of treatment without breaking, without leaving, without requiring anything to change. And now that person is not responding that way anymore. Something is being said or not said, where before there would have been explanation, justification, the endless gentle softening of one's own position to make it more acceptable to people who were not entitled to that softening, but received it anyway because the old version of you gave it freely to keep the peace or because it felt like the kind thing to do, or simply because that was the habit of someone who had not yet decided that their position did not need softening. For anyone, the new version of you is not softening, and the people who benefited from the softening are shocked. They are not laughing anymore. Because what was funny to them before was the predictability, the reliability of someone who could be counted on to keep giving, keep accommodating, keep making themselves smaller whenever the situation called for it, which was often by their design. What is not funny is discovering that the reliability has changed, that the predictability is gone, that the person who could be counted on to behave in a certain way has updated their behavior in ways that do not serve everyone else's comfort. As efficiently as before, what they are experiencing is the natural discomfort of someone whose expectations were built on a version of you that no longer exists and who has not yet adjusted to the version that does. That adjustment is their work to do, not yours. I want to speak to you now about what is happening inside you, because the external reaction is interesting. But what matters most is the internal reality of someone who has made this shift and is navigating the aftermath. There is likely something that sits alongside the power of this new version of yourself. Something quieter that does not always get named in the celebration of having stepped into your own. The discomfort of disappointing people, even people who were not treating you well enough to deserve the accommodation you were giving, even people whose shock at your new version is more about their own entitlement than about anything you have done wrong. It is still uncomfortable to let people be disappointed in you when the disappointing of them comes from choosing yourself rather than them. That discomfort is real, and it is not weakness. It is the natural feeling of someone who cares about people, even people who perhaps do not fully deserve the level of care they have been receiving. But I want to say something important about that discomfort and what it means. In the context of the choice you have made, the discomfort is the price of the upgrade, not a punishment, not evidence that you did something wrong. The natural and temporary cost of moving from one version of yourself to a more accurate one. The cost of the friction between who you have become and the expectations of people who built their relationship with you on an older model that has been discontinued. The friction will resolve as people adjust or leave, or find that they actually prefer the new version. Once the shock has settled, and what remains after the friction resolves will be relationships that are based on who you actually are, rather than on who you were performing yourself to be, for the comfort of everyone else. Those relationships are worth the discomfort of the transition. I want to tell you something about the people who are shocked, because I think understanding them will help you hold your position with more steadiness when the shock produces pressure on you to return to the previous version, to be more comfortable for them again. The shock is not about you, not really. It is about them. And the specific discomfort of discovering that someone they thought they understood has outgrown the understanding they had of them, that the dynamic they had been operating within has changed without their consent and without the version of you they were relying on being available anymore. That is not your problem to solve. Your problem to solve is you, which you are doing beautifully in the specific form of deciding that your comfort, your needs, your presence in your own life as a priority matters as much as anyone else's. Hold that when the pressure comes to be smaller again, because it will come from the people who benefited most from the previous version of you. Whew. You are rightfully in your villain era. Rightfully. That is the word that matters. Not gleefully, not cruelly, not as an act of revenge or punishment. Rightfully. As in, this is correct. This is the appropriate response to a long period of giving more than was sustainable, or receiving less than was deserved, or accommodating dynamics that were not serving you, but that you maintained because leaving them felt harder than staying in them. At the time changed, you changed with it, and what is rightful now is the you who knows their worth and acts accordingly, without apology, without the endless softening, without making themselves available for treatment they have decided they are no longer interested in receiving. Stay in it. The villain era for as long as you need to establish who you are now as the new normal for yourself and for everyone around you, not as a permanent state. The villain era is not a destination. It is a transition from who you were performing yourself to be to who you actually are and what you actually require from the people and situations that get access to your time and energy. When the transition is complete, when the new normal is established, when the people in your life have adjusted or been replaced by people who do not need adjusting, because they were always capable of treating you correctly, the era ends naturally into something better than either what came before it or the era itself. They are shocked. They are not laughing anymore. And you are exactly where you are supposed to be.